I'm going to talk about this blog post today from Zemek. Rendering queue, Google needs 9 times more time to crawl JavaScript than HTML. And I like a lot about this article. So Zemek was kind enough to take my course on writing thought leadership to work through it. And this article, interestingly, is his first attempt at applying some of those principles into his writing. And obviously, it makes my day to hear that somebody has found value from it. They feel like it was useful. But what's even better is to hear of an example where it had better performance, actually resulted in a real world impact. Because apparently this article got potentially up to about 15,000 page views, and Zemek attributes a lot of that to some of the principles and the ways in which he shaped this content. So I thought I'd very quickly have a look through this and talk through 3 things that I think he does very, very well that we could all stand to learn from. So the first thing, right, the premise of this article, this is what does the heavy lifting for most content. It is the idea and not so much the execution. And the idea here is excellent. So in my course, I talk a lot about the importance of challenging truisms. There are lots of things in the world that we take for granted, that we assume to be true, that if we investigate a little bit, we realize don't always pan out, don't always hold up. Zemek has done that. As the premise of this article, he is challenging a truism. He's assuming, most people assume that Google crawls JavaScript the same way it does HTML, and he thought, let's find out, let's challenge that assumption, because if there is a difference, that could have a material impact on how we do our jobs. And the way he's gone about doing that is through an experiment. And I've talked about experiments in another episode of this, but they are possibly the most potent and predictably efficacious type of content marketing around, for one simple reason. If you run an experiment, you have data that nobody else, no other web page, no other company on the web possesses. So the only place to get the payoff, to get the results of this research, is this one article. And generally that leads to a bunch of people linking to, featuring and including your article in industry newsletters and so on. So right from the get-go, an experiment, fantastic. And I think experiments and this kind of thought leadership are going to become more important in a world that is swimming with AI content, because you've probably seen the hype around ChatGPT, the staggering, spooky ability of AI to write about pretty much anything in an authoritative and oftentimes accurate way. The one thing it still cannot do and will not be able to do is go out and collect new real data. We as humans can still do that, so content like this from Zemek will continue to have an edge. This will become, I think, some of the most important types of content in the world. So not only does he do a great job at running an experiment and showing you what happens, he then also does this beautiful thing of wrapping it in a coined concept. And as far as I know, rendering queue is not a term of art that exists in the SEO world. It is something that Zemek has coined himself to describe this phenomenon that he revealed through his experiment. So as well as having a great experiment with original data and challenging a truism, he has then wrapped it up in a really simple, really pithy catchphrase that people can reference and use very easily. And Zemek said he thinks that is one of the reasons why so many blogs and newsletters featured it, is because it sounds legit. This is a concept that he has coined, he has created, that describes this new phenomenon. I know very little about tech SEO, but this idea, this concept of rendering queue, lodges immediately in my head in a way that something more opaque and less direct would not. So that reason number 2 why this article is fantastic. And the third thing, perhaps counterintuitively, is as I read this, there's lots of stuff in here that I don't understand. And that is fantastic, because I am not the target audience for this. I'm a fairly competent content marketer. I know a bit about tech SEO, but I do not know as much as the average reader of this blog and the average person that would enjoy this article. So the fact that it's over my head means it probably is pitched at the right level for people that do this for a living. He is speaking to his peers. He is not pulling his punches. He's not talking about very basic concepts. He's not talking through all the foundational parts of it. He is talking in jargon and direct tech SEO focused language. And that is great. As he points out, like, he knows the shibboleths of his industry, the terms of art, the phrases, the shortenings of words that his peers use, and he's not afraid to use that. So I read through this as a marketer, slightly over my head, but if you want to get featured in a technical SEO newsletter, something that's read by your peers and read by other experts, this is how you do it. You speak at their level. You don't bother explaining what JS means, what JavaScript is, the use of HTML. You just cut straight to the interesting part that experienced audience is going to talk about. So yeah, I am a huge fan of this article from Ziemak. I think he's done a fantastic job at applying some of the ideas we talked about, and this is just outright a good example of thought leadership in a very technical niche that you might not expect to contain thought leadership. So yeah, kudos Ziemak. I love this. I think we'll learn a lot from the study of this article. All right, thanks for tuning in.